In this video, we're going to be explaining what happened to sq006, aka 9VSPK. This aircraft was a Boeing 747-400, and this is a photo of it before it was painted to the tropical livery. The registration of the aircraft, as I told you before, is 9VSPK. The aircraft was usually being operated on routes like Singapore to Los Angeles via Taipei, which it does kind of daily and routine. The aircraft hasn't been named Megatop like every other 747 in SIA's fleets. So this is going to be a rather different Beta Racer fun video, as this is going to be an air crash investigation on sq006. As you can see here, plane was usually put on routes from Singapore to Los Angeles via Taipei because they didn't do a full non-stop route like what they do now with the A350-900 ULR. And also the aircraft was just painted in the normal SI livery before it got painted to the tropical livery, because the aircraft was painted to the tropical livery for advertisement on the new business class product they had on the 747. So they painted this 9VSPK and another 747 9VSPL to the tropical colors, which for me it looks very nice, one of the best liveries out there. After the aircraft got painted into the tropical livery, it was obviously painted on two planes in Singapore Airlines fleet, the 747-400 with the registration 9VSPK and 9VSPL. In the photo here, you can see a Singapore Airlines 9VSPK taking off from Changi. And here you can see 9VSPL parked on the runway, on the gate. Just about to push back. Here you can see now we're getting back into the story. The aircraft is a 747-400 taxiing to the runway. It was supposed to taxi to 05 left. So the aircraft was being told to go to 05 left, runway 05 left, which is basically a runway's name they have to taxi to. At the time there was a typhoon going on. It was very windy and gusty outside. It was also nighttime as they were heading out from Taipei to Los Angeles to complete their final route. They were coming from Singapore to Los Angeles via Taipei on the time of this accident. The aircraft is painted in the special livery, as I told you before, with the amazing two engines as the 747-400 has. And there was only two of these aircrafts painted in this livery. The aircraft now does its turn onto runway 5 right, the wrong runway. The aircraft was told to go 5 left, but as the pilots were so focused on taxiing the airplane slowly and not skidding it, they thought they were at runway 5 left, but then they were actually on the runway 5 right. This is how the accident begins. It could be many stuff, and runway 5 right was a runway which was under construction at the time. It's not really something good which is supposed to be happening, but we have to deal with it. The pilots then go on to runway 5 right, preparing the aircraft for takeoff, turning on the landing lights for its usual takeoff room. The flight should be routine, but just a little bit turbulence as it take off. That's what the captain said before, as they were lined up with the runway. The air traffic controller could not see them as there was no visibility due to the typhoon. Once the aircraft taxis onto runway 5 right, it holds and stops for a little bit of time to get the engine and everything set up for takeoff configuration. As it was so windy, they were off the line. They were a bit offline with the runway, like the markings, so they were not in the middle of the runway, which was not a good thing. But the second officer and first officer decided to go with the takeoff roll later on, so there was no need to correct it. So the aircraft is now waiting on runway 5 right to take off. They're just putting the landing lights on right now. As you can see here on the front wheel. They did this right on the runway because when they were taxiing, they were focused on not skidding the aircraft because it was so windy and wet. Flight 006 now takes off, and as it begins its roll a few meters in, like when it's at least at 140 knots, which is kind of not yet rotation speed, but very close to 160 for a 400. The aircraft, the pilots can see like a construction vehicle ahead. They try to lift the airplane up, but it's not enough speed. So it was also a late reaction. They saw it. They could not do anything about it because the 7% 400s are really quick on like when they're quick. Like it's very hard to stop them, and plus the pilots are in the upper deck, and right ahead of you have the nose. So that's kind of a downside of 747 design. The aircraft now heads towards the construction vehicle, and as I said before, the aircraft sadly hits it and losing its front nose, and then puts the aircraft downwards, which is not a good thing because then it causes a lot of fire to just come out from the engine because it hits the engine breaks off, and then it's just disastrous at this point. The pilots then just could not do anything. There's just fire coming in. The passengers inside just had to face the burning hot heat coming from the fire. As you can see, the aircraft hits its front nose, and even a 747-400 can easily crash like that because the construction vehicle is very tall. There was also a forklifter involved in that scene as they were repairing the runway. The runway was under repairs, like for just repairing the runway, getting the concrete and everything up. It was on its final stages of repair. Then the very next day it would have come back to service. But then, as they obviously taxied the wrong runway, like I need to say something here. Like I don't know why Taipei did not do this by putting some barriers on the runway indicating this is a closed one. Like I get it, even if there was no construction here and it still took off on the wrong runway, it would have been a routine flight, just a mistake. Like I would say it's a bit of Taipei's airport organization fault here, as it's a very sad thing that you see a 747-400 crashing. The aircraft now, as you can see, goes down and they fire from the fuel tanks explode because of the pressure going into it. The engines are still intact at the moment, and the aircraft now has a lot of structural damage. At this point, the airplane is now nose down. Just there's nothing they can do to control it. At this point, the pilots know they're gonna crash. It's gonna be a big one. Like at this point, no one even knows that the pilots are gonna survive. The aircraft now crashes, and that was it for the plane. And yeah. Years later, the A380 in Singapore Airlines A380 got painted in the SG50 livery, making the first special livery since sq006. It also got painted in 2015. Later on, SIA discovered that they didn't want to keep the special livery for too long like sq006, so they decided to paint it off to the normal A380 livery because they still believe like what happened since sq006, just to believe in some curse which was there. Singapore Airlines said they'll paint it back to the normal A380 very soon after. So in 2017, it was painted already to the normal livery, and it was not there anymore. Sadly, it's now in the the normal Singapore Airlines livery. And as of 2022, this aircraft is grounded due to COVID and the pandemic. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this new type of video, and I'll see you in the next video.